Yeah, that was the. You definitely seem like a person. So a lot of these, because so you know, oh no, he doesn't have. No, we coins. Coins. I bought the hyper price. I never spent. I'm not spending money on
Yeah.
his sister who's graduating. She's also married. Just got married.
Yeah, good job.
I'm sure you're all of my entire this and
No. That was fun. By the way, you had 24 hours.
my entire this is from that. And they oh oh you're
Oh, I knew you were strong.
you don't understand. Dallas is their they live by yeah.
Okay, welcome. Hello, everybody. All right, we're going to start with a very quick shot here with the panelists. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce the moderator of today's panel on global sustainability and food insecurity, Mr. Gene Axius, CEO of Creating Healthier Communities.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. So I am deeply humbled and excited to be part of this conversation and to be with this esteemed group of leaders. First of all, I want to say congratulations to all of you for just the amazing service that you do each and every day, both for your communities, for the states in which you're in, and really the ripple effect that you're having across our country. We're going to actually have a very robust conversation around really elevating the critical issues as it relates to sustainability and food insecurity, both here in the U.S. as well as across the globe, and the important role that students, our youth, can play in helping to ensure that our communities and our societies are thriving and surviving and addressing these critical issues in a very intentional and meaningful way by bringing innovation and also thinking about the collaboration that's required across leaders in different sectors and industries. So we're going to have a conversation and clearly want to ensure that there's time for lots of Q&A because we want to hear from you. This is for you and about you, and we also want to learn from you as well as learn from our fellow panelists today. You have, I believe, their bios, but I will be actually doing a brief intro, and I'm going to take my seat and have them also introduce themselves. And I'm looking forward to the conversation. So I just want to say, first of all, congratulations. Second of all, this is about to be fun, and we're going to get into some very meaty discussions and also some amazing innovations in terms of what is working. And we also want to hear from all of you. So thank you for your time today, and again, congratulations.
Sure, I'll go ahead and start. I'm Mike Parrish with Bayer. I have the privilege of serving on the Congressional Award Board. So to my fellow panelists, thank you for joining us this afternoon for an important conversation. And to the students in the audience, congratulations on earning the award. It is a great accomplishment, and you should all be very proud. Most people know Bayer because we invented aspirin like 150 years ago. We're in the shelves of the drugstore with brands like Alka-Seltzer, aspirin, Claritin, things like that. But the reality is we're a company that sits at the heart of the intersection between health and nutrition. We're a life sciences company that develops products that serve patients and farmers and consumers. And so, how we address hunger and nutrition and food insecurity is something that we're really passionate about and really look forward to the conversation today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mike. My name is Jamie Holliday. I'm a senior advisor at the U.S. Department of Agriculture at the Food and Nutrition Service, also known as FNS. FNS is the government agency that administers our nation's food insecurity programs. So programs like the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as SNAP, the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, WIC, and the National School Lunch and School Breakfast Programs. In total, the agency has 16 food assistance programs that we administer to help combat domestic hunger and increase food security. So I'm looking forward to contributing to this conversation and to hearing from all of you as well that are here, and congratulations.
Yes. Hi, I'm Barron. I'm the president of the World Food Program USA. I'm the panelist that needed a cup of coffee. We work in the United States around policy, working with the private sector, amplifying the voices of those who are hungry around the world, and making sure that everybody in the United States knows the situation around the world with acute famine. And we support the work of the United Nations World Food Program, which is based in Rome. 20,000 boots on the ground. The United Nations World Food Program, the beneficiary of the Nobel Peace Prize in 2020, feeding 160 million people every single year, and doing two different things. One is emergency assistance. We know this from what's happening today, whether it's Gaza or South Sudan or Haiti. And then we also do a lot of resiliency, which is helping smallholder farmers around climate, create incomes and jobs so that they're being lifted out of poverty. And glad to be here today, and I would say, again, congratulations, and I would say I need you to go on this journey with us today.
So thank you, Baron, Jamie, and Michael. Looking forward to your, and thank you for your introductions, and really looking forward to this discussion. And I want to kind of start it off with the first question, and I want to hear from all of you in terms of, what are some of the most critical environmental issues that require our immediate attention, and how can our young leaders here make a tangible impact?
You want me to go first? All right, I'm right next to you.
You're right next to me.
I should have gotten a double espresso. So I would say that the biggest issues facing climate or the world is warming. You look at the headline today in Miami. It's happening in Kenya. It's happening in El Salvador. It's happening in almost every country where we work. With the work that we do at the World Food Program, 80% of the world lives in areas that are prone to climate variations that are really disrupting the livelihoods. So our solution to that is around anticipation. So one is you have to anticipate that the world is changing. So how do you do that? If it's a smallholder farmer, maybe it's training the farmers about different types of crops to grow to make sure that they're more resistant to heat. We do a lot of work with restoring soil and planting trees, because as you're cutting things down and growing, you have to make sure that you're revitalizing the soil. I think that protection is a big one. I was just in North Carolina, in New Jersey last week, working with Zoetis, a big farm animal nutrition company, and they help us with livestock insurance. Also working with veterinarians. So for me, I would say the protecting is around making sure that if you're hit by an immediate natural disaster, a flood, a rain, an earthquake, that there is a temporary assistance. So the World Food Program, biggest provider of cash-based transfers, small 4-month stipend that you would get if you've been prone to a natural disaster. I would say, and then energizing. Energizing is the sustainable of solutions, because the world's changed. The world's not gonna go back in time, so we have to prepare better. In terms of the second question, what can people here do? I have my list. Hold on. I would say a few things. We need your voice. That's probably the number one thing I would ask for. You all have people that listen to you. You wouldn't be here today if you didn't. And we need you to amplify the message that there are a lot of hungry people in the world, 309 million people today suffering from acute malnutrition. 42 million people around this world, our brothers and sisters, doesn't matter where you live, are suffering from, on the verge of famine. They are marching toward famine. And famine, we know, is hitting in some parts of the world. Today, I think you met with policymakers. U.S. policymakers are instrumental and so critical to the work that we do, particularly from a funding perspective. So when you're talking to your local policymaker, let them know that you heard today from the World Food Program that there are far too many people around the world that are hungry. We have solutions, but we can't do it without government funding. And then when you're ready, you join us on a journey. Follow us on social media, become a donor. That's how you learn and go on this journey with us.
Thank you so much, Baron. Jamie?
Thank you, Baron. I agree. The world is changing, the climate is changing, and it's presenting real challenges for how we address cultivating food in a way that is responsible and in a way that protects our environments. So I think coming from a food insecurity perspective, that is one of the biggest challenges that we have. When you think about food insecurity, I used to work for Congressman Dwight Evans from Pennsylvania, who was one of the creators of the Healthy Food Financing Initiative, which helps to marry private and public funding to build grocery stores in food deserts to help make sure that they have access to healthy foods. And so one of the things that he used to say is that food security is national security. And that is so true. We just came out of a global pandemic where we were lucky things weren't worse than they were. We were able to sustain ourselves. People were fed. People were able to keep going. Ultimately, a lot of people did not, and that is unfortunate. But as a country, we were able to sustain. And so I think that when it comes to cultivating resources, there are practices that are currently being considered. Just this week, USDA and Secretary Tom Vilsack announced a partnership with the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research to provide grants of up to $2 million to scientists who are going to be doing research to address food insecurity while also mitigating the impacts of climate change and keeping social justice and social equities in mind as they carry out their research. So those are grants that are forthcoming. They're going to be due in July, so really looking forward to the work that comes out of there to build on this and ways that we can better cultivate food and land without harming our resources and also giving back to communities that have been harmed historically. I think also when we think about the impacts of food in the environment, food waste is a major issue. A lot of the food that is wasted and thrown away ends up in landfills, and that, over time as it breaks down, can contribute to greenhouse gases. And so one of the ways that USDA is helping with that is through the Emergency Food Assistance Program, also known as TFAP. The department has given grants for the Farm to Food Banks program to help donate and harvest food that would otherwise be thrown away and contribute that to the emergency feeding system so that it benefits both producers as well as the hungry. And so for the second part of that question, how some of our audience can get involved, I think, is educating yourself about some of the partners that are doing this work. There are so many that are involved in each of these, from your local food banks to universities whose researchers are looking at these issues. And I think, within your community, finding out where that work is being done, finding out where there is need, and as Barron said, raising your voice and making it heard for where that need is and bringing it, to your members of Congress, bringing it to USDA so that we can build those connections. Those are all ways to get involved.
Michael?
Yeah, I'd add, I think Barron touched on the biggest one, which was clearly climate change. And to maybe put the magnitude of the problem in perspective, we're the largest investor in research and development in agriculture. We spend about $2.5 billion a year. And that sounds like a lot of money, but again, when you put it against the magnitude of the problem, it's a drop in the bucket. For us to bring one new seed to market, and if you want that seed to be, pick a plant, tomatoes, and you have to grow tomatoes and you're gonna need to do it with less water, less fertilizer, more disease pressure in a world that's getting hotter, it's gonna take us 10 years and $100 million to do that. So the challenges that we have today that are coming from climate change, we need to anticipate what it's gonna look like 8 to 10 years from now and start making those investments today. So that's why I say whether, if it's food production and how we help farmers adapt to a changing climate is clearly core to how you address climate change. But the other side to climate change is not just food, it's also health, right? You're seeing diseases spread from being just tropical here in the United States into Texas and Florida. We're gonna have a little bit of a heat wave here next week in DC. It's gonna be in the mid-90s all week. You see cardiac and respiratory ailments and incidents from those go through the roof when temperatures like that go up. And then what can folks in this room do? I grew up right outside Congressman Evans' district in Pennsylvania, and when I came to the company, I was proud that I could tell the difference between corn and soybeans. So I've learned a lot over the last 20 years. I think one of the things that we can do and that you can do is to better educate ourselves on how our food is produced and where it comes from, so we can better advocate for the changes that need to happen so that we can have a sustainable agricultural system going forward. It's hard to appreciate the challenges that a farmer faces every day when you don't know what it's like to grow up on a farm. And that doesn't have to be a big Midwest corn and soybean farm. It can be the farm down the road here in Maryland that grows peas and tomatoes and sweet corn. So I think that advocacy from everyone is essential to how we collectively address some of these issues.
I really appreciate all the points that you all raised. And I want to take this to an area, particularly you mentioned health, and really looking at the intersectionality in terms of these major issues, particularly on health, whether that's population health, whether that's the health in terms of communities. At CHC, our focus is on addressing health inequities, particularly through partnerships, realizing that no one organization or one sector can solve it in isolation. And we're seeing huge differences in disparities, if you will, in terms of how long and how well someone actually lives that is directly related to where they live. So in other words, your zip code could actually be a death sentence because of many of the factors that you're mentioning. So when we think about some of these major issues that we just talked about, climate change, food insecurity, the potential health implications, and as we are collectively experiencing these issues as a society, as a community, it's also fair to say that not everyone's on the same boat. That some communities are probably disproportionately impacted by some of these issues because of a range of structural issues that are in their communities or in society. Can you share with us how can we ensure that those who are most impacted by a lot of these issues are not disproportionately affected moving forward if things continue to get worse? So how do we ensure that as we are thinking about solutions, and we have these amazing leaders here, that we are thinking about these solutions in a way that really ensures that we're closing those gaps in a way that's meaningful to ensure greater health for all? Yeah.
He's looking at me again.
We can start with Jamie.
No, I'm fine to go first. I'm joking. I would say for the World Food Program, because we work with the most vulnerable individuals around the world in countries that generally don't have a lot of food, or they're more subject to climate change. One is it starts with the community. And I want to insert that into the conversation because no organization can go in, governments can't go in unless the community's involved. At the same time, you have to get the government to buy in, to invest in what we're doing. So, you know, the advantage that I've seen with the United Nations World Food Program is we're invited into work, so you kind of have a seat at the table with government. Mm-hmm. And that lets you move agendas so that you can create plans for the entire country. I would say that what's happening in El Salvador is very different than what's happening in Kenya. So I would say that's number one. The second thing is, even though we're talking about hungry people, in Central Latin America, there are big issues around obesity. And so one of the roles that we play with a lot of our other organizations is around education for nutrition. So maybe an example I would give you is in Honduras. A couple years ago, there were 2 hurricanes, one after another. And the World Food Program gives this cash card, say it's $100 a month, total of 4 months for a family of 4. But prior to getting that card, you have to go through a training program that teaches these families what to buy and what not to buy. And just a cute little side story is I happened to meet a mom. Her husband had migrated to the U.S. She's got 2 kids. She was eligible for the cash card. She said, "Hey, Baron, would you like to go to the store with me?" Now, first of all, I'm not a very healthy eater, so I just need to let everybody know that. But I went to the store with her, and you know, she bought tomatoes, and she really listened, and she talked about what she had learned through the World Food Program and other partner organizations around nutrition. And while the cash card doesn't allow her money to buy meat or fish, it does allow her to buy fruits and vegetables and rice and beans. But it was a great course that she said about nutrition that she didn't know before. The second thing is I'll just tie in kind of school feeding if I can. By the way, one of the reasons I came to work for the World Food Program because I was in Gambela, Ethiopia, which borders South Sudan, and I visited a refugee camp, and what I noticed was that folks, particularly women and children that were coming in, and grandmothers that were coming in from South Sudan to Ethiopia, the first place they stopped was for feeding. And what I realized is that you can have all the immunizations set up and the teachers, and we can register you for your birth, but if you don't have food or water, the likelihood of you getting to the next step is going to be very, very limited. And I'll end on the school feeding part. The World Food Program, the biggest provider of school meals around the world, 15 million school children last year. You can think about yourselves. You know, you can't learn on an empty stomach. But I would say that part of the ability of providing school meals are that it's the only meal that the kids get in a day. By the way, when I was in Liberia, we learned that school enrollment was up 50% because of school meals. That's pretty extraordinary. Talk about the domino effect of providing a school meal. Meals were also provided for the kids to take home to their families, so the families wanted their kids in school. But the best part of it, what is called homegrown school feeding. So local farmers, local procurement, it was sustaining the community. So I would say that health and nutrition and training are built in and must be built into everything we do. And the local communities must be engaged.
Jamie or Michael?
Go for it, yeah.
Okay. So I think Jean is absolutely right. We've seen that depending on where you live and your zip code, your life expectancy can be lower. And I think that in order to address that, and no matter what kind of circumstance, we know a lot of that has to do with infrastructure and some of the climate impacts in those communities. But no matter what aspect you're looking at, I think you have to bring those who are impacted to the table. You can't just continue to prescribe solutions without really hearing from the people who are impacted by the problems. And so I think from a food assistance perspective, at USDA, there are ways that we're doing that in communities that are underserved, particularly through the WIC program, the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children. We're working to diversify the workforce because we know that WIC works. It has proven health and nutrition benefits for the mothers and the infants and children that it serves. And we know that those benefits can be realized when people are getting care and services from someone who relates to them and someone who has lived through their experiences and someone who's not just another government voice who's telling them, that something is good for them and, doesn't come from their community. So there are partnerships that we currently have underway. We just released a strategy in May that we are working with our state agencies around the country to implement to better diversify and equip the workforce to make sure that we have people, workers who are representative of their communities and are also equipped to be supported in their jobs and to be able to stay as WIC providers for as long as they would like to. Another thing that we are working on is increasing the ability of tribal organizations to be able to have more authority over the food that they provide on their lands. We know that tribal communities have long been unjustly impacted by history, by the issues that have taken place over time, and they've been oppressed. And we know that has been no different in the food system. Tribal communities, it has gotten a bit better, but back when there was food that people truly did not want to eat, like heavily processed food that was put into boxes and shipped to tribal communities. As of now, we are currently engaged in tribal consultations throughout the year. We just had one last week on hearing from tribal communities and bringing everyone to the table so that leaders can tell us what they need so that we can go back and work on it. We currently have a demonstration project at USDA through the Food Distribution on Indian Reservations program, so that local tribal farmers and producers are able to sell their goods through the programs, and they can choose the products that they actually would like to eat and that support their communities as well.
I'll give you maybe a quick example of kind of sitting at the intersection of health and nutrition. In the same day, we do a lot with food banks. We work with a lot of rural communities to try and address rural hunger. And so obviously, like Feeding America is a big stakeholder of ours. And if you haven't seen it, they have a great tool where you can go online and you can click on your state and then your county, and you can see the number of people in your county that are food insecure. And we were looking at that map, and so that was a meeting in the morning. And in the afternoon, I was in a meeting with folks on the pharmaceutical side of our business, and we were looking at how we reach patients that have chronic kidney disease, generally brought on by type 2 diabetes or heart disease or obesity. And when we looked at where the health disparities were with people with chronic kidney disease and the counties that had the greatest food insecurity, the maps were almost identical. Yeah. Right? It was seeing the same map in two very different contexts. And so that, when you peel back kind of the layers of the onion in the healthcare setting, what we realized was the biggest barrier to people getting treatment was identification and testing. These are people that don't have access to the services they need to get the treatments that they need, right? They don't go see a general practitioner, once a year. They don't go get their physical. And so by the time they realize they have a significant ailment, they've progressed too far. And so in a way, the learning, as we thought about it, was, you need the food bank for the people with type 2 diabetes, because that type of walk in and get what you need, I don't say we have it perfect. We still have a long way to go, clearly. USDA and others do, like Feeding America, do a great job. But that healthcare in rural communities or even in urban communities is really lacking.
I really appreciate the points that you're all bringing to this conversation. And as you were all talking, what you represent on this panel is really a multi-sector approach. You're representing your organizations, particularly as it relates to closing and addressing many of these major issues. So given the fact that we have these amazing leaders here, and we're talking about these major issues, I want to ask you this question. How can we harness the power of grassroots movements, and particularly the energy and synergy and the activism that we see among our youth to drive the policy changes and the corporate changes in terms of practices to assure that we have greater sustainability and food security that addresses these issues for all populations? And this time, I'm going to start with Jamie, and I'm going to go to Michael, and then I'll come back to you, Baron.
Baron's off the hook.
I want to hear what they say.
Well, as I mentioned before, I think that having our young leaders get involved with some of these nonprofits, universities, all of our partners that are really engaged in this work is really important. I know that there are, volunteer ideas. I know some folks have, are thinking about college, and maybe some of the programs that you're thinking about, maybe some of the things that you hear here today about the scientific partnerships that are happening to get at the intersection of some of these problems might help engage your decisions about where you want to go and the things that you would like to learn. As Jean mentioned, none of these programs work on their own. I used to work at USDA during the Obama administration, and I took a break to go to Congress, and I'm back. And even in those more than 5 years, things have changed drastically. We have so many more partners who are really engaged in modernization efforts to bring programs forward to help meet people where they are now and to make sure that we have more people at the table. So I think finding out about the needs in your communities and really getting engaged through all of these opportunities, whether it's volunteering through internships, at government agencies as well, we have internships that are open. You can go on USA Jobs. So I think that there's a lot out there. You just have to, learn about the opportunities that are available to you and the needs in your community. And yeah, I just get involved and to make your voice heard.
Michael?
Yeah, I mean, you teed it up in a way in the question, and I was having a conversation with some incredible young men at lunch. It is that cross-sector and cross-discipline approach that's needed, right? People don't think of a company like Bayer and say, well, you're a data science company, but we are. People don't say, you know, you're an analytics company, but we are, right? So you're going to need to bring, you know, we always say in a company, we have lots of data, but very little insights, right? We need to get better insights, and that's going to take people with a broad array of skill sets, whether that be basic sciences, whether it be engineering, any of the STEM. I know there's going to be a panel on STEM later today, right? And but also people that are just creative and willing to take risk. You know, one of the things that you appreciate working inside a company is, you know, I mentioned we spend $2.5 billion on R&D. The vast majority of that money will never see a return. You have to be willing to take risk and place bets and say, I believe this could be a solution. And if it is, great. And if it's not, then we're going to move on to the next thing. And so to bring that back to your question on how you motivate the grassroots, I think we've got to have people that are willing, number one, to take those risks. It's easy to just be opposed to things. It's really hard to be in favor of something that puts, you know, your future, you know, direction and path on the line.
Ditto. So I would say, if I'm looking in the room, when I was your age, I was thinking about careers and what do I want to do? And I was kind of all over the place, and I had some great mentors in my life, and I looked at a few different things, and I volunteered for a couple of organizations that were very near and dear to me, and ended up working for one of them, and was there for 19 years before I came to run the World Food Program USA. So I would say get engaged with something that you're passionate about, something local, could be international, could be the World Food Program. Think about careers either at the World Food Program USA or the United Nations is an amazing place to work. Or even if you go to work for a Bayer or a company, the impact that these companies are making is just significant. Or we think about the Department of Agriculture, the work that we all do together could not have a greater return on livelihoods. I would say, again, we talked about volunteerism, working for the UN, you know, sign up for the grassroots advocacy. One of the things that, probably the biggest shock that I got over the last 2 years was we have about 120-some thousand individual donors who support the work of the World Food Program USA. And we did an advocacy alert asking our donors to contact their local policymakers. We made it fairly easy and talk about the work of the World Food Program, why we needed government funding. 7,000 responses. It was absolutely staggering and it told me there is a really strong affinity in this world to food. And we know that made a difference. I also would say that one-on-one interaction, probably even more important. And the other thing that you can do is you can go to a concert. What are you looking at me like I'm crazy? One of our greatest ambassadors is The Weeknd, Abel Tesfaye. And we benefit from every ticket that he sells. He does advocacy for us. He does engagement for us. He's our biggest donor to Gaza and our biggest donor to Ethiopia. And so when you go to Live Nation, it links you to the World Food Program USA. And so I would just say grateful for young people who are also rallying around food and education, because we talk about grassroots, but I would say that whether you're Abel Tesfaye or we're in this room or you're me, we all have a role to play in making sure that individuals know about the plight of food and that there are solutions. Let's not forget that before COVID, we saw many years of decline in hunger. That is really important for us to remember. But we've seen an increase, and we have to solve that.
Well, please join me in giving them a round of applause. Our amazing panelists. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Baron. So we want to hear from you. We want to see, we want to hear your questions. We want to have a conversation with you. We also want to learn from you because we believe that in order to solve these issues, it is intergenerational as well. So at this point, we want to
For those that have questions, we have 2 queues again with the microphones, so everybody, I know this row has questions. So.
please state your name and your question.
All right.
Hi, my name is Anne, and I'm from Illinois. I was wondering what metrics all of your organizations use to measure your impact on sustainability and how you quantify all the work you're doing.
Yes.
Perhaps,
We'll go to Bear.
perhaps I'll start, because it is a complex question, but, we think about it in 3 dimensions, right? Which is, whatever you're doing, does it have a positive social impact, a positive economic impact, and a positive environmental impact? And you can use different metrics in each of those, but it has to be positive in all 3, in our view, to be a sustainable project.
Anyone else?
I would say for the World Food Program, every single country works with governments to develop specific KPIs. Our KPIs do deal with the environment, but more around food waste, because the one of the main reasons people are hungry is because 50% of the beneficiaries of the World Food Program are farmers and smallholder farmers, and so we need to make sure that we're giving them the tools, the training, the resources to make sure that their produce does not go to waste.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anaga Deepak. I'm from Austin, Texas. I just wanted to start off by saying thank you so much for your time, for coming here and providing us your really inspiring insight. I was wondering, with the growing population of America, of the world right now, and the growing rates of food insecurity, as you said, I've heard lots of inspiring insight from you about connecting with local producers, with local farms, but what are your thoughts on lab-grown produce and especially considering droughts and other climate impacts that growing has on the Earth's sustainability?
Jamie, would you like to kick us off?
Of course. So I can't get too into the weeds on lab grown, but I will say that I think that recognizing the place that alternative foods and plant-based products play in our food system is really important. As you mentioned, it is a concern to be able to have enough food to feed a growing population. And USDA has recently allowed for greater plant-based and alternative products through the WIC food packages and the school meals rules that we just updated that serve meals to children in schools through lunch and breakfast.
Darren or Michael, anything you'd like to add before?
I would just add, when I was just in Kenya, we have a farm-to-market alliance. Most of the food is grown using hydroponics. To the question earlier about waste and soil, and it's all about connecting farmers with open markets. And then we do some work with a lot of U.S.-based companies to try to get them to purchase more from the beneficiaries of the World Food Program.
I just add, we have a lot of investments in whether it be vertical farming or alternative protein companies. I think I go back to the magnitude of the challenge that we have to feed, a growing population in a hotter world. I don't think we have the luxury to say, well, we don't want to pursue that particular avenue. So I would say very much an all of the above approach.
Great. Over here, and please speak up to the mic and state your name.
Hi, my name is Grace. I'm from Illinois. I had a question pertaining to the integration of incentives like small-scale polyculture in areas that are affected by redlining, just because those are typically those that are food deserts, and seeing that kind of intersection between sustainability and helping that food insecurity, how would that look in urban development?
Yeah. So, Michael, I think, and I'll try my best to repeat this excellent question, but I think, Michael, you kind of spoke to this earlier, looking at the maps in terms of exactly how do we start to align incentives in a way that addresses some of these potential disparities, in this particular case, those food deserts, and looking at how you align those incentives and what might that look like in particularly urban areas.
Yeah, I think there's a great, and I won't claim credit because Bayer's certainly not doing this work, but partners of ours are, which is around the idea of medically tailored meals, right? So I come back to how do you go from just having data to actually having insights, which is to say, in a particular area where you might have, lower income, a diet that's not ideal, which leads to health impacts, how do you create a meal plan for a person that not just provides them the nutrition that they need, but also addresses some of the health challenges they have? And there's some really interesting organizations out there that are doing this. I would say there's still a lot of work to be done, maybe a Nobel Prize or two to figure it out. But I think it's absolutely an exciting space and a place where we can make a lot of progress.
I'll actually I'd love to add something to what Mike said, which is one of the ways that we invest is that we co-invest with governments. And we show governments data on what's working. It's a big role of the UN, because the governments have a lot of different priorities, but we try to guide the governments with data in the field. But when you co-invest with the government, they tend to invest more in solutions that work. And again, driving policy is a big role of the United Nations. Remember, when you think about the UN, we're invited in by countries to work. We don't just go in and say, hey, we're here, we want to help. We only are there when you're invited in because you have a seat at the table with governments. So we're able to drive their decision-making. And yes, there is a lot of focus that's, like, again, going back to Kenya, that may be put into Nairobi, the capital, but what you're seeing is that most of the agriculture is not coming from the city, it's all coming from the smallholder farmers. And so by co-investing, by advising, and by making sure that we're advising the stakeholders and the communities on the need and what some of the solutions are.
If I can just add to that, just one thing. I can't speak too much to the precision agriculture part, but USDA is invested in small rural communities. We just announced awards for the Healthy Meals Incentives, which targets funding into rural communities, into school districts, to help them build those partnerships with local farmers and get that food into school cafeterias.
Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Luke Harmon. I'm from Prince George's County, Maryland. And piggybacking off of what Mr. Seeger said earlier about policy, I just wanted to know more specifically how policy and advocacy goes on and has a relationship between the government side and maybe the nonprofit sector of the NGOs, and how we can better advocate for some of the disparities that go on in geographically challenged areas like Haiti and also within the American community.
Sure, thank you. I would say advocacy, a few different roles. For example, today, the global head of the UN World Food Program, Cindy McCain, is in DC, meeting with different policy stakeholders, congressmen and women. And what we do is we do a lot of education. And you have to think about, without food, what would the world look like? And the level of stability that comes with food. You mentioned, Haiti is a great example. And one of the most destabilizing factors around the world that creates war is a lack of food. I will also tell you that food is used as a weapon of war. And we see that in a lot of countries today where those that are starving because their food is kept away from them as a result of war. So for the World Food Program USA, our advocacy is around, for example, we did a staff delegation this past year. We took 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats to the field to see the work firsthand. That is really, because you've got to see the work. It's hard to really explain it. Number 2, we get all of our supporters to be super engaged in the work. And then we do one-on-one meetings with policy members to make sure that they know the impact of the investment and the destabilizing impact that a lack of food will have on the world. I should also note that there's this misnomer that the federal government is, so much money goes to international food aid. It's, I think, 0.7% of the federal government money goes to food, and so it's a very small percentage. But it's, I would say that proudly the U.S. government has a long history of supporting the World Food Program and other organizations for food. Hunger is a driving force behind instability.
Thank you.
Michael, is there anything you would like to add? All right, perfect.
Hi, Hi, my name is Gracie. I'm from Dallas, Texas, and I know you had mentioned some of the impacts of having a food disparity on physical health and things like that. I'm very focused on mental health, and I know that there's a lot of correlation between physical health and mental health and things like that. And I also know that there's a lot of correlation between food disparity and mental health. And I'm curious if you see a need for more like resources and information within all of that intersectionality, or what your opinions are on that.
Jamie, would you like to take that? I think everyone's looking at Jamie.
Yes, I will say you're absolutely right. I think that you cannot, well-being, it incorporates both physical and mental health. I will say it's unfortunate that the Food and Nutrition Service does not so much focus on that intersection, but I think that when it comes to the settings where we are in doctors' offices, like a WIC-related setting, I think that the comprehensiveness of benefits is something that we recognize is really important. A lot of WIC offices offer referrals to other healthcare services or social services like housing assistance if participants need it. So I think recognizing that there is that need, for our services to be better integrated to really meet to meet the whole being, the whole need, is something that we are getting towards, and I think it's something that our partners are certainly focused on. But the integration is something that we can continue to build on, and it's very important. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'll add one piece to this because it's a very emotional topic for me. I've had the sadness of seeing so many families that have escaped war. And I was in Ethiopia and met a family, and they had escaped from South Sudan. This mother invited me into her home, and she had her son. She had 2 daughters and a son, and we were just sitting there because there's no furniture, but you're sitting in more of a tent area. And her son, I thought he was sick because he was bent over. And I said, "Is your son okay? Is he, anything we can do to help?" And she said, "No, he's a victim of war. He saw his father killed." And so when I think about mental health, I think about the mental health challenges we do have here in the U.S., but I would say the biggest mental health challenges we face are the victims of war. The mothers, the children that have had to flee their homes in the middle of the night, that have seen family killed, that are suffering the consequences, and they have ongoing emotional distress because of that. And I would just say that a small part of that recovery was food. That was one less thing that mother had to worry about. But I would say that, when we think about mental health, and conflict is the #1 driver of hunger for the World Food Program today. We see it on the news every night. You see it on your social media channels. Imagine what these families are going through today, whether you're in Gaza or whether you're in South Sudan. And so I would say, mental health is driving people toward food.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jason. And first, I just want to thank y'all for being here today and having this panel. This question is mostly directed towards Mike, but y'all can also jump in. So I was wondering, you were originally talking about climate change and how companies like Bayer are using research and science to create seeds that can adapt better to the changes that climate change can create. And so I was just wondering, how can corporations and how can companies like Bayer make sure that these genetically modified seeds or these new research and technology are accessible to small businesses and small farmers?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it doesn't even, the technology, how you do it, there's a lot of different ways. And there are really promising new technologies like gene editing, where you can go in and make small tweaks and have profound changes. The great thing about agriculture is everything is local, right? So a plant you develop we've got some folks from Illinois here, the plant you develop for, Champaign, Illinois, isn't going to be the same one you develop for, Stockton, California. And so you have to work with local farmers because you have to develop a product that they want and works in their local environment and that they're going to need. And so that's why you see, unfortunately, research and development costs so high in agriculture is, you're not developing one iPhone that you can sell around the world. You're developing thousands of different versions of a plant that have to work in the local environment in which they grow crops. And so it's incredibly challenging. So getting those products in the hands of small farmers is incredibly important.
Thank you.
I would love to add something. First of all, we are so much more innovative than Bayer. I just want to say that, Mike. Tonight we have an event at the World Food Program in the Bay Area with Google. And what we have is the Innovation Accelerator, which is based in Munich. And the Innovation Accelerator works with small businesses, small companies. And we offer grants for them for businesses to take an idea, to grow it, and come back with a sustainable solution. And I'll give you one example of a small business that I saw 2 years ago and where they are today. A smallholder farmer from India came in and presented a concept about using solar energy to dry imperfect fruit and vegetables. Because to the question earlier about the environment and toxic emissions that when you have just tons of fruit on the side of the road. So basically what we found is that imperfect fruit can be used in soups. And so this individual created a system to dry the fruit, to take it to the market, to package it, and we're now selling it to some major food companies here in the U.S. But I would say that small businesses are the creators and coming up with some of the most innovative ideas to solve hunger. And I do love Mike, just to go on the record.
So we have a couple of more questions. All right, there we go. We have a couple of more questions, so we're going to do a lightning round. And we have about 2 minutes. So we're going to get to each question and have our panelists provide a brief remark, a response within the next 2 minutes.
So my name is Andon, and I also live in the Dallas area. And one other thing that I was thinking about with, I'm going to college in the fall, and I just registered to vote. And one of the things that I was thinking about as far as making an informed decision is how can I make sure that the person I'm voting for actually represents my interests? And because one of the things I'm thinking about as far as local elections, I'm into those as well, is how to improve the public transit infrastructure, because my region is really sprawled out and I don't think that that's up to par yet. So, but I also have like a bunch of other positions I have on other issues, and how do I know that like a particular candidate is saying something if they're actually going to carry it through, and how I find unbiased information, because I feel like I have this worry that there's only like 2 positions and you have to pick one. But as far as like how do I incorporate like my nuanced views into my decisions?
Okay, lightning round. You call them.
Yes.
You ask them, but put it in writing.
Sorry about that.
Good afternoon. My name is Chase Plater. I'm from Prince George's County, Maryland. And my question is, you guys are talking about the importance of advocacy, but I'm wondering what is your main route of not only getting your message out there, but trying to persuade not only policymakers, but potential donors to your cause to really support you and support your mission?
Who would like to take this?
My lightning round answer is that what Barron said, which is the direct connection, and you have to tell them a compelling story. You got to make your argument, and you got to make your elevator speech done in 30 seconds to a minute. That's how you get people's attention, and that's how you get them engaged.
I would also say focusing on impact. If there are, like, if your community is impacted, or you personally, or even better, if there's something that your cause is impacting them, showing them how, whatever you're advocating is going to serve, their community and yours is a really great way to get them on board.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Savannah. I'm from Tucson, Arizona, and I just wanted to ask, I know that you mentioned how war and conflict affects food security, but my real question is, how do you utilize international organizations such as the United Nations or NATO in order to bridge the gaps in political ideologies and in thought when it comes to opposing nations in order to better improve that food insecurity? It doesn't not necessarily solving the conflict itself, but solving the issue of the food insecurity that comes with it.
And I believe this question is specifically to you.
I could tell. So again, this is the advantage of being in country and working. For Gaza, maybe as an example, we've been there for 20, 30 years. Most countries. So you already have this existing established relationship. And I would say that with the United Nations, that we're nonpartisan. So we work with all sides, all different types of armed conflict to make sure that we're getting food to those who need it most. And I would say one of the real roles of the United Nations is to make sure that the world knows about the impact, particularly the impact on women and children, and the impact of war. So, we will frequently call for a humanitarian ceasefire. It comes from me, it comes from our global executive director, it comes from the UN. And then there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes that no one ever hears about, which is really good stuff, where we're trying to broker peace deals. So I would say that a lot of things happen behind closed doors to broker peace that allows us to deliver food.
Thank you. So we're going to take this last question here. And last two questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Hello, I'm Jackson Ishibori. I'm from Wyoming, and I'm an incoming freshman at Columbia this fall. My question is, thank you, first off, for the panelists and all of your time you've dedicated today. My question is, you mentioned global sustainability being reliant on infrastructure, whether pre-existing or introduced. How does this relate to a country like Nauru, where it's stripped of all its resources for guano and other materials, and the agriculture there is incredibly minimal, and it can't be able to sustain the actual community itself?
I just saw it. So maybe, Kat, I'll give the example of Madagascar, you think? So Madagascar came to the World Food Program USA with an opportunity. Large communities needed solutions. They needed a solution for education, for technology, for irrigation, for web services, and for hydroponics. And so we basically helped the World Food Program scale and build a model that is helping about 3,000 families. We then we did the success, the KPIs, what worked, what didn't work, and then we took it to the government. And the government has now decided that they're going to invest in it and they're going to scale in it. So what I would just say is sometimes it's investing in new approaches to scale and invest up, but you've got to show governments and other investors how and why it's working.
Thank you.
Hello, panelists. My name is Joshua. I'm from Fairfax County, Virginia, pretty near here. My question today is that GMOs have been on the rise. An example I can name is golden rice, for instance, that has provided vitamin A and prevented vitamin A deficiencies in many Asian communities. However, a lot of these GMOs have been socially scrutinized, such as how a lot of Asian communities can't accept the fact that golden rice is actually golden instead of white. So for each of the panelists up here, do each of you guys support the expansion of GMOs throughout the United States and on the international community? And if so, how do you guys plan on expanding GMOs across to address such scrutiny in the world?
Quick lightning round.
I would just say, obviously, we were one of the pioneers of the technology. I would say less important than the specific technology is using science to solve those challenges. And I mentioned gene editing before. There are a lot of different tools that we can use in agriculture that have a direct benefit on farmers and the people that they serve.
I would say that the agency that I work for at USDA obviously does not, do work on GMOs, but the USDA itself is involved in biotech, which helps look at ways that we can use alternative methods to meet some of the needs that we talked about with making sure that there is responsibly enough food for folks to eat.
I would say for the World Food Program, it's really just multivitamin fortified supplements from plumpy nut to helping feed a pregnant mother.
So please join me in thanking Jamie, Baron, and Michael for an excellent conversation. And now I'm going to turn it over to Erica. Thank you. Excellent.
Thank you so much, Jean. Thank you to our panelists. I know you guys might have a few minutes to hang out. I know it was customary for the young people to be able to ask a few more questions. I want to let everybody know we do have our STEM panel that starts promptly at 4 p.m., so don't go anywhere, followed by our reception. So thank you all so much.